And I've been talking about each one in order from one I don't have the most experience with and the one that I have the most experience with. Basically, talking about my views on some of the things that is good about the community, but then also mostly talking about the things that actually turns people off the community that would have been into it in the past, if that makes sense. A lot of people who are woke will say if you were not a part of that community, then you don't have an opinion or a voice. Where I'm very much against that. I believe in freedom of speech and the ability to voice your ideas, even if you don't know much about the community or about the history or what they really go through. You still have the audacity and you still have the right to say what you think, and then you can chat with someone about it, and then they can give you a new perspective and you can give them a new perspective. So if I'm going to go in order, I've done the feminist movement first because obviously I'm not a woman, and I say that I'm not a modern feminist, but I'm an old school feminist or an egalitarian. So, like most people in this world, I'm obviously for women having the same rights as men and having the same opportunities as men. But what I'm not for is victim blaming and women overall exaggerating certain incidences. So, yeah, so there's that one. And then I did the Black Lives Matter movement. I have more in common, things in common or experience with that because I am mixed race. Even though I don't visually look it, I am mixed race. So I've dealt with a tiny, tiny portion of the other side of racism. So I spoke about that in a video. But today I'm doing the LGBT community. So obviously this is the one that I'm mostly associated with because I am gay and I am a part of that community, and I've definitely had my annoying moments with the community, but also the community was what gave me the right to get married, so obviously I have that to be thankful for. So, first and foremost, I want to kind of give a disclaimer, and I've given a disclaimer from what I remember in the other two videos. I'm not making this video to cause hatred across anyone. I don't want to blame a particular person for bad things that the community says. I believe, as a human being, that everyone should have rights, even if you are not a minority. And I believe that everyone should have a voice, even if you are not, at this moment, a minority. And that's something that I don't like about a lot of woke people. I've literally been told, because I'm not trans, that I don't have an opinion on trans people, which I think is just anti-libertarian and anti-humanistic. We all have a voice, we all have a story, and I believe that everyone should either tell their story or have the right to say their side of a story. So because I believe in that, I believe in, not 100%, but I believe in the model of old school libertarian, not new school libertarian. So old school libertarian, from what I've done a bit of research on and what I've heard different YouTubers who say that they are libertarian, old school libertarian, is that it's for the equality of human rights, fighting for human rights, making sure that everyone gets an equal amount of a voice, which is something that I've wanted since I was a kid and what I want for other people since I was a kid. A lot of conservatives back in the day would be fighting against the rights of people because they see it as against their religion, against their faith, or just against the whole conservative movement. If you look into the history, I mean, it's getting better now. There's a lot more conservatives now that have become almost like old school libertarians, where they're a bit more open-minded. They will listen to the opposing side. But back in the day, conservatives... Sorry, I got a phone call. So I was saying that a lot of old school conservatives were very much against the rights of people. If anything, they advocated for the disservice of people because that means that they were more in power. And but now the new school lefties are pretty much agreeing and doing the same things that conservatives do, but they've just changed the language to for against human beings. It's for the rights of said human being, even if that means making other people feel like they can't voice their opinions or it's against another person's rights. So that's why, personally, for me, for humanity, if there could only be one side, one political thing that other people would have, which I'm not advocating for, everyone should have the right to agree with what they want. But me as an individual, do think that just like if there had to be one thing that everyone voted on, I think it should be old school libertarian, because it's for the well-being of every human being. It's making sure that everyone has equal opportunity, which I think should be a universal thing. So that rant is over with now. So I'm going to talk about my experience being in the LGBT community. So I have had some disagreements with a lot of people within the community, but before I talk about that, I actually want to give thanks to what the community has done. So if people watch this now, or if more people watch it in the future, they know that I'm not just complaining. So obviously I love the fact that now in the society overall, people do see us as being equal when it comes to how we're like as human beings and for the rights. I think if you were to ask people, are you for gay marriage, or are you for gays adopting, or gays being not discriminated in the workplace, or gays having it normal not to basically harass and beat up people who are like that, I think the majority of people will say yes, and it won't just be for show. They will actually think and feel that way. I would say the only thing that I would say that people wouldn't be agreeing to that is if they were religious, which is fair enough. But I even think they wouldn't agree with harassing and like beating them up, because the majority of religious people won't beat people up because it's against their religion to cause violence. So now I want to talk about kind of the negative things that the community does that, like I say, turns people off. So, like I've said, I'm not saying this to get at anyone in particular. This is just what the movement overall says that I think is bad. So I mentioned that in the past, conservatives and right-wing people were the ones that were against equal rights for people in general, but mostly gay people, because they saw it as the same as like incest, bestiality. And if you look at old interviews or old Bible thumpers saying this back in the day, they would actually say that. Some of them still say it today, which I personally obviously don't agree with, but that's actually one of the things in the community that they're trying to normalise, and that's why I had to back out of that community. So I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, but so the Conservative obviously was very much against that in the past, and that was because it was against either their religion or because of the community itself. It was all about conserving what they thought was the right way of living, which was the straight way, the white way, and the male way, more times than not. So because that was one side, naturally the other side, old school libertarian, was very much fighting for the rights of human beings as long as they weren't hurting anyone. So naturally, the community has had this history of not feeling comfortable with conservatism, rightfully so, back in the day, because they were the ones that made it hard for us to have rights. And then it also has a history of the community being predominantly on the left, the old school left, which is, you know, completely valid and based on history, because, like I say, old school libertarian is all about fighting for equality and the rights of every human being, and obviously gay marriage and gay partnership and making it normalised was a part of that mission. So naturally, people will associate just being gay, being bi, being trans, being a lesbian to do with being a leftist, where actually I know people in the community that's on YouTube that are actually conservative or old school libertarian, but they agree with more the conservative side, which I actually do agree with, weirdly. Like, never in my life would I have said that I agree with a lot of conservatives, but now the conservative movement has calmed down and actually become more inclusive in some ways. The new school libs are actually one of the most close-minded groups out there now. Like I say, they've embodied the old school conservatives for the most part. Like, they don't agree with you having an opinion that's the opposite of what the movement says, and if they do, they'll threaten to cancel you or bully you or say that you are against said human being. That's obviously one thing that I don't agree with, the harassment and the cancellation of just having an opinion. Opinions never hurt anyone. Opinions never take away rights. This is what people need to get in their head. If it's just an opinion, opinions never hurt people. It's actions that hurt people. Actions will always harm. Not always, but if their action is to harm, it will always hurt people, it will always take away their rights. But if it's just solely an opinion and you don't act on your opinion, then there's nothing wrong with having said opinion. So another thing that I personally disagree with in the community is there's this new allegiance. This is more so in America, but I think it's starting to happen here, which I actually am a tiny bit scared of. So, like I say, mostly in America, but it's starting to slightly happen here as well. There is this acceptance on people who are of a strict religion for it to be normalised to, like, be bred in a society that wasn't an origin of that religion. So, for example, within the LGBT community, it's now woke to agree with Islam, which to me is just bonkers. So, when I say disagree with the Islamic doctrine, obviously I'm not saying that Islamic people or people who are Muslims or believe in Islam cannot coexist within LGBT people, because I have met people who are like that and we were friendly, and at one point we were friends with them. So I'm not saying that the people cannot get on with us, but I'm saying that the doctrine is the complete opposite of LGBT rights. Like, literally, if I was to go to that kind of country 10 years ago, I would have been harassed, bullied, and probably be accused of A, being a witch, because they are highly religious, and also I would have been chemically castrated, because back then, if you are a gay guy, it's better for you to be chemically castrated and be turned into a girl and exist as a girl than to be gay. So, you know, that's something that I just highly disagree with, what the woke LGBT community talks about. Like I say, people can coexist. and people of Islam can absolutely be friends and fight for rights within the LGBT community, and the LGBT community can fight for discrimination against the race, but not the religion. But at the same time, know that the doctrine is actually the complete opposite of LGBT rights and fighting for the rights, because the doctrines in that in Islam is very homophobic. Something else that I also very much disagree with within the community, and I think I've spoke about this in other videos, but I'll kind of mention it again for anyone who hasn't seen it. There is echo chambers within every community and every political standpoint. So I hear very much the same go-to statements that you say to people when it comes to feminism, when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement, and when it comes to the LGBT community. So one of the things that I find personally annoying is that this trans debacle is become to the point where it's become more of a fad, more so than not. I don't obviously have a problem with anyone who is actually gender dysphoric and know that it's like technically a mental illness, that it's not a bad thing to have it, but to actually want to transition. To me, you cannot have an identity that is made up and expect people to act like it is normal. Trans people have existed since history, like literally. I think even in like early 1800s, it was like not like normal to be trans, but it was a thing. What is not normal is all of these genders and all these sexualities that are made up. LGBT has been normal since the time began. And if you look back in history, there are actual historic times that's nothing to do with spirituality or religions that are made up, but actually just with human beings coexisting. But the only thing and the only argument that I've heard of like woke trans, fake trans people say that, you know, Greek gods and goddesses had like different pronouns and had like alternative pronouns. And I'm like, well, Greek gods and goddesses, you cannot fully prove 100% that they are real. So that just proves that your community isn't based on 100% reality, like which mine is. To me, the simple LGBTs of the world are a different community to the woke people of the world. So the ones that create different sexualities, genders that is made up, and the ones that are condoning harm in the world, they're very separate to us. Even though they've latched onto our community, to me, they are a separate community. My point, kind of, when I went on this ramble, was that if you are a living, breathing trans person who wants to actually transition because you have gender dysphoria, I have nothing but love and respect for you. And I will, if anyone wanted a friend to be a part of that journey, I will be so down for that. Because to me, you have the right to live how you want to in the society, to blend in society. But all of these fake trans people who come up with different names for different reasons, I have respect for you as a human being, but I don't have respect for you with what you're trying to do, because you're trying to confuse language. You're trying to make people that's outside of the LGBT community be against us now, because now we're seen as crazy. And you silence people like me who try to make sense of what your community is trying to say. And so many times we get told to shut up. Like, I've been told to shut up once or twice within my whole life. I know that YouTubers that aren't woke but are simple LGBT people will get told to shut up because we don't know what we're talking about, even though we are the forefront of the community. So, another thing that I personally find annoying about the community is, and again, I think I've mentioned this in a video, but if anyone hasn't seen it, I'm also going to mention this. Conservatives, Republicans, and right-wing people back in the day, I'd say probably 2000 downwards, but it wouldn't surprise me if in some places it was still popular. But it was popular back in that time. If you were right wing to state your opinions in a way that was like volatile, and it was quite well known to compare just simple gay people, bi people, trans people to basically people who have sex with animals, who have sex with minors, and have sex with the dead. And obviously, the community fought very hard against that, being like, well, no, that's like completely different. Sexuality is who you are romantically and sexually attracted to, and it doesn't cause harm in it itself, where obviously them three things are things that aren't consent, and also they do cause harm. They'll cause trauma within their life, and the community just very much fought against that, and we saw that as crazy to compare the two. But the LGBT community now is actually beginning to normalize having sex with animals, having sex with minors, and having sex with the dead. It's like the conservatives and the right-wing people knew, but because they were so bigoted against how they said it, and because they just mentioned other conservative-leaning points, people just dismissed it, like me. But like I say, it is starting to happen, and it makes me sick. Like, I actually saw a post on Twitter, on Twitter, basically saying, at that time I didn't have Twitter, but I saw, like, the actual tweet going viral on Facebook. It was basically saying, any maps, what the community does at the minute now, for people who create harm and advocate for harm, they create a name that is different to what the original name was, so it doesn't sound as bad. So for paedophiles, it's basically MAPS, which stands for Minor Attracted Person, and then there's a word for bestiality, but I can't remember what the name was, and then there's a name for people who have sex with the dead. And the tweet was basically, if you are any of these people, please know that you're valid, that you are a part of the community, and that we will embrace you. And when I saw that, I literally face-palmed. My gay spirit and my humanity spirit was crushed. Because how the hell can a community that was once about love and acceptance and fighting against said so things and now happily embracing said so screwed up things? And it actually made me think about the community in a different way. I actually backed off, and I was like, I cannot say that I am a part of a community that actually now advocates for bestiality, what they call MAPS, but as far as I'm concerned, they're paedophiles, and for having sex with the dead. Like, to me, that's so different to just me existing and me having rights. So I now often say that I am a gay individual instead of saying that I'm a part of the LGBT community, because now I feel ashamed to be a part of that community that I was once happy to be a part of and proud to be a part of. So obviously I very much disagree with that, and that then people should go outside of our community and not make the normal ones, which is the majority of us, look not crazy. Another thing, just kind of a little side note, I also don't like the because obviously the gay community is full of gay people. Even though I love the individuals for the most part, I don't like how they can be bitchy towards each other, to the point where it comes across as bullying. And I get it to a certain degree because it was just our version of turning our bullied experience into kind of a comeback. But the thing is, we do it to each other where we're not actually the ones that were the bullies. So I have a thing against that, where let's not be too bitchy and just exist as gay individuals. Like, because I dress very punky most of the time, you know, I've been called a weirdo from a lot of like bitchy guys, but they talk about it behind my back. And to me, being gay isn't just about being yourself when it comes to who you love and who you are attracted to. It's how you express your gayness. And to me, I almost express my gayness from a punk standpoint and from like a metalhead standpoint, because that is being an individual. If you are gay, the fact that you dress up in like rock band t-shirts, that's being an individual. It's like the same thing as if you are straight, then you're wearing colourful stuff as a straight guy. There is one more thing that I'd like to mention. I would say that this is a thing that's just not with the LGBT woke side of the community, but just with any community. I am an individual that likes to express myself in whatever way I feel. And I like to think over the past years of me just being myself and existing, that I've gravitated to different people, mostly introverts. I don't know why, because I'm somewhat extroverted. But, you know, I've gotten quite a few friendships over the past many years. And obviously, some of them have different opinions than I do. And believe it or not, unless you harass me with your opinions, like every time we see each other, I actually like it when I disagree with people, because then I get to learn more things. And I've noticed that in society, people don't like it when you disagree with them, and that's why they threaten you, saying that you're going to be cancelled or call you transphobic or whatever if you're on the extreme left side. So something that I am against, and that I just want to mention, that I am against basically the talking points on both sides of the political spectrum. I believe that you should be an individual first, and then be a person of politics second. Okay, I think I've said everything that I've wanted to say. Like I say, 80% of it I have already said in other videos, but some people might not see that video, so that's why I wanted to bring it up in this video. So if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. If you have an experience very similar to me, or if you agree with me or disagree with me, please let me know in your comments down below, because I'm very much for people saying how they feel and expressing how they feel. So obviously I want that to be on the channel. If you don't feel like you can do that, but you want to do it someplace maybe a bit more privately, I have my Twitters down below, and I will also link my other YouTube channel where I basically give reviews about music, albums that I have. I state the songs, I tell you what my favourite songs, and I say what I think the artist is trying to say with the songs. So have a great day, guys, and love ya.